Alright, ladies and gentlemen, my name is Ryukishi, and just last night I actually managed to finally defeat the chalice dungeons and complete everything there is to do with them. And I promised myself that I wouldn't write a Bloodborne review until I do, or make a video on a Bloodborne review until I do, because it is part of the game. Now, yes, I have not yet actually beaten the final boss, well, the true final boss, kind of. However, those are just three endings, and I've already beaten the first final boss, and I'm currently waiting to get enough money to get the DLC so I can continue on with the game as my character to play through the DLC and do a roleplay playthrough of that. So, if you think all of my opinions are invalid because I haven't beaten the game yet, you're a moron. Anyway, I'm going to start with some typical soul-isms I don't like about Bloodborne. I do highly like Bloodborne and find it to be the better of all of the Souls-likes that Fromsoft has put out, even Elden Ring, and I am going to compare it to Elden Ring just for a little bit, for something, but anyway. So, Bloodborne has a lot of soul-isms that I do not like. Long walk back to the boss, if you die, because, God forbid, we put a close-by teleport point to it. If you die, so say for instance, I have 10k of my currency that I use to level up or buy shit. If I die and then I go back to it and die again, those are lost forever. And if I, for some reason, or I go back to where I died again, it says, you retrieved your currency. No, I didn't. I dropped nothing. I gained nothing. Where the fuck is the shit I just dropped? That's always bothered me about Souls-likes in general, because I dropped nothing. Why does it say I retrieved something when I didn't drop a damn thing? Not even one. So that bothers me. How light the story is in terms of it basically not existing except for the beginning cutscene, and that's it. And then any boss cutscene that you see, it just to introduce the boss. Yeah, I'm not a fan of that, because I'm a huge story guy, and story is pretty important for me. Otherwise, I don't really give a shit about the game. And Bloodborne's story, much like all of the other FromSoft games, is very much locked behind items and just reading a bunch of optional shit. And I, for one, do not like that. I think a story should be present, and you should find the lore, and the lore should be given to you slash found through the main campaign, not through optional content, in my opinion. Say what you will that, ooh, I could piece together the story. Cool, great. I don't want to do that. And don't say, oh, then these games aren't for you. No. You should not have to piece together the story bit by bit through item acquisition or acquisition through optional means, especially if an item has a low percent drop rate, especially if the side quests are obtuse as hell, which this game has as well. But there's only like 2 side quests, technically 3 if you want to count the chapel and the clinic, but I personally not gonna count that. But anyway. So I think that's it for the soul-isms I don't like. So one thing I have against this game is that there's low weapon variety. There's not that many weapons that strike my fancy much. There's fast weapons and then there's slow weapons, and that's pretty much it. And even the fast weapons aren't that good, and even the slow weapons are meaty, but Bloodborne is a fast-paced game, and the game teaches you to be fast-paced. So it kind of goes against that. And I am going to bring that up later with the chalice dungeons, because, ooh, boy, am I pissed off. Um, Now, for a majority of my playthrough, at least with my roleplay playthrough, I used the Hunter's Axe, and I then switched to the Ludwig's Holy Blade. And that's what I stuck with. Because I felt like if I went with literally anything else, it wouldn't be worth it to do, because I would have to upgrade it from scratch, and I wouldn't have the materials for it, because the insight stuff is bullshit. And that goes into the next topic, which is low build variety. Granted, Bloodborne isn't really about build, or having multiple builds, it's just, You either go with a strength weapon, you either go with a dexterous weapon, you go with a mix between the two, or you go with blood tinge. And that's really it. And for blood tinge, there's not that many weapons. I mean, there's one, and it's really cool, but you can't really make a build around it because you don't get runes that offset the HP drain, really. Unless if you're somehow a god at the game and get off a bunch of visceral attacks. But that would be using your gun attack, which is the parry in this game. And I do like the parry. You just have to get really good timing with it, but it feels oh so satisfying when you do get it off. There's also the hunter's tools, and aside from like 2, they're not really useful, in my opinion. And the 2 that I'm talking about is the shell, where you get to apply a buff to your weapon, if the weapon is applicable for the buff, and the one that acts as a parry, in case you don't want to use your gun. Which is okay, I guess, but you need to have high arcane for that. Tying into that, I don't like that there is a non-consumable Bolt Hunter's Mark and non-consumable Fire and Lightning Paper. I wish there was a Hunter's Tool that allowed you to apply fire to your weapon and a Hunter's Tool that applied lightning to your weapon. Or just a weapon that immediately has a fire mode and a lightning mode. I know there's the mace, but I don't like mace weapons. I'm more of a sword guy, myself. However, one of the good things about this game is that the bosses feel like a challenge, but in a good way. Because they don't feel overly difficult and a slap in the face. Except for 2. I had difficulty with the Blood-Starved Beast and the first final boss that you face. Those are the only 2 bosses that I've had the most difficulty facing, aside from the one hunter that is in the church. That hunter can go suck a nut. But yeah, I was actually successful with, at the very least, doing 2 tries, maybe, with nearly all of the bosses. Aside from the Yarn of Hunters, those guys took me 3 tries, I think, but there was 3 of them. Can you really blame me? But yeah, the bosses proved a challenge, and they were a good challenge. Well balanced, not too hard, but not too easy, and just adequate. I can't say the same thing about the Chalice dungeons, though, but I'm going to get into that in a little bit, because the aesthetic for Bloodborne is very good. Now, in terms of its lighting, the game is very dark, and I don't like that, because I can barely see things sometimes, especially in Chalice dungeons. But thankfully there is a hand lantern, but the hand lantern doesn't really prove to be useful all that much, unlike the actual torch. But there is that. Another really good thing is there is plenty of optional areas for you to go. If you just bum rush your way through the game on a casual playthrough and just do the mandatory areas, you could probably beat the game in under 10 hours, if that. The game is, granted, you are going to want to upgrade your equipment, or at the very least, just upgrade your main weapon, and that's about it. But I could foresee players completing the game in under 10 hours. Because all of the optional content is, like, there's plenty of optional areas for you to go down and go through that there's plenty for you to explore. And that's a good thing, in my opinion. Like, the more optional areas, the better. Especially in between zones as well. Now, that's about all the good there is to say. Aside from one thing with Chalice Dungeons, and that's being able to share Chalice Dungeons and make things easier for other players, as well as grant, unique weapons, like Uncanny and Lost, I believe they're called. And making it easier to grind items, which leads into the Chalice Dungeons. This is the big one. So, Chalice Dungeons are these not randomized, unless if you're doing someone else's Chalice Dungeon, not randomized, dungeons that you go through for loot. But you have to go through one to get to the next one. That's fine. What's not fine is the abundance of items you need. So in order to get to the ones that you need 9 materials of the blood item, for instance. In order to do that, you need to grind that. Now, granted, casually, you'll be able to gather that in, 2 runs, maybe. But seeing as you need Ritual Blood 5, 18 of them, so to speak, that's going to take a while. And I don't like that, in my honest opinion. For the last chalice that you're going to have to go through to get the trophy from the boss, I'm not going to spoil what the boss, well, I am going to spoil what the boss is, because you're watching the damn video about it, as footage. In order to get to her, you need jelly. And in order to get to the jelly, you need to do the defiled, an is chalice. And in order to do the is chalice, you need to go through an optional boss, and I think you also need to go through another dungeon. And in order to get that chalice, to get that boss, you need to go through the defiled chalice. And the defiled chalice I hate the most, because the defiled chalice reduces your maximum HP. And you know what that means? That means bosses can now one-shot you. All 3 of those bosses one-shot me. And I was using the Yahargul gear, as well as the Knight's Wig, because it offered the most defense, I think. Nearly all of the bosses had an attack that could one-shot me, and I did not like that. The first boss, and by the way, all of these bosses for the Defiled Chalice all have the same mentality. Go slow, not fast. Take your time, don't bum rush. Which defeats the entire fucking purpose of Bloodborne, which is be fast, be aggressive. These 3 bosses spat in the face of the main rhetoric of the game and said, nah, take it slow. Now, I would be fine with that if it was just one boss and my health wasn't reduced. But that's the issue. It was 3 bosses, and my health was reduced. That's the problem. So the first boss was a humanoid boss, and you could very easily stagger it, but what I did was I just took my time and punished it whenever there was an opening. The second boss was a lava boss, or a lava beast, and I think I had summons help me with that because, yeah, no way in hell was I going to be able to do that by myself. And there were some attacks that one-shot me, especially if it bum-rushed me as soon as I entered the damn fucking area. And then there was Amygdala again. And Amygdala can one-shot you. So I had to employ a cheese strat with Ludwig, where I go behind Amygdala, and then I charge my attack and strike it in the face. And that actually worked really well, because nothing I did managed to work. Because as soon as I entered, sometimes he would one-shot me by just attacking as soon as I entered. I lost a lot of blood echoes because of that. Because of what I mentioned earlier, where if you die, and then you go back to try to pick up what you lost and die again, you get punished, and all of those blood echoes are now gone, and you dropped basically nothing. I understand that it's punishing, but where do my blood echoes go? That is too punishing in my opinion, and it's fucking stupid. I can understand it if I had blood echoes already on me, but I didn't. And even then, me personally, I would have it so that I drop my blood echoes and I can retrieve both piles instead. Because the punishing aspect is having to run to the boss, because that shit's time consuming. But anyway, I think I've ranted long enough about Bloodborne. Is it worth playing in 2025? Absolutely. If you are a Souls fan, or if you want to get into FromSoft's Souls games, I would definitely say Bloodborne is the best one to get into. Now, I hear you say, but wait, there's Elden Ring. I don't agree with Elden Ring at all. Not because it's an open-world game, but because it's not that good of a game to begin with. It shouldn't have won Game of the Year when it was released, to begin with. That should have gone to Xenoblade 3, but I'm just saying. But that's besides the point. The only thing Elden Ring does better than Bloodborne is build variety. And being able to infuse your weapon with an ability rather than infuse your weapon with a consumable. There's also the non-consumable teleport back to a site of grace. That I like. But in comparison to Bloodborne, Elden Ring isn't as good in my opinion. Bloodborne is still the best Souls-like that FromSoft has ever put out. If I'm being completely honest. But I think that'll be all from me. This has been Ryukishi with his review of Bloodborne.